How I made that decision to say it's time. You come to a place, I would say, especially to the younger generation, where I know that many people battle and say, is it time to leave this job? All right? Or is it time to step out and do this? It comes with a discernment. And there was this time when I knew, Tash, it's time to leave. At that time, by the way, I was managing properties as well. And so I knew, for now, this is who you are, and it's time to step out. Now, stepping out needed courage. Very often we have to make these decisions and let go of what we call our comfort zone and the comforts, whereby your comfort could come in many forms. Your comfort comes in a solid paycheck that you know is there and will be there at the end of the month.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Can We Talk podcast, where we have conversations worth having. My name is Belinda and I'm the host, and welcome to episode 2. If you're loving the conversation so far, be sure to subscribe and follow us on all podcast platforms. I am extremely excited for today's guest. This is someone that I look up to and I absolutely love. Today we have the amazing Miss Natasha Rubadiri here with us. Welcome, Auntie Tash.
Thank you, Belinda.
Auntie Tash is one of Uganda's most recognized interior designers, and while she started out in business and business management and finance, she was able to redirect herself into the creative space. So if you could please introduce yourself and maybe do a better job, that would be much appreciated.
Okay, thanks, Belinda, and I'm blessed to be here. So who's Natasha? Who's Tash? Most of my friends and people out there know me as Tash. I have a background, yes, of business management, admin, and finance, which I did at the University of Botswana. I lived in Botswana for many years. And my evolvement and transition from that to design, really, to creativity, is between a span of, I would say, like 10 to 15 years. So there's a story along the lines of that, but it actually starts with my childhood. Yeah.
That's where I actually wanted to start from. So let's go way back before your Auntie Tash.
All right.
Were they calling you Tash by then, or you were Natasha?
I was Natasha. I think I really was Natasha as a little girl.
So
Yes.
what? Tell us about Natasha. What's different between Natasha and Auntie Tash?
And Auntie Tash. All right. So one vivid memory I have as a little girl is walking with my dad. At the time, my dad was a lecturer. My dad is from Malawi and was a lecturer at the University of, at Makerere University. And the memory that I have is always walking. He'd take us to his office, but there was the printing area where there was paper, and then all I remember is color. So we'd get lots of paper. And to me, there was just this thing about color. So color on paper. And it's now that I look back and see where I am and then begin to understand the evolvement and how I got to where I was. I'm a strong believer of understanding what purpose is and who we are and our whys and the reason God made us. So for me, when I look back, now I can see. So that's a vivid and a real clear picture of my childhood.
How old were you?
It's possibly like 8, 9, 10. Fast forward then, I grow and become a teenager. I was in school then in Kenya. And I was good in 3 specific areas. I was very good at music, singing. And I was very, very good in art. And then I was very good at math. And at the time while I was doing my O-level, we had to make a choice of the subject that you'll take to then move on. And I picked commerce over art. And the reason I made that decision as a teenager was art required that we had to go to school on Saturday on the weekend.
You were like, no.
And that was not really my progi. So I'm like, no, I'm not doing this art thing. But just to show that the art was so embedded and really in me, and I was really good at it, the teachers called in my parents and said, we're ready, we want to make an exception. If Natasha wants to do the commerce, let her do commerce and let her do art. And still as a typical teenager, I said, I am not doing art. So that then took me into commerce, which then took me into the line of business administration and accounts and at university level.
But since you said you were good at math as well,
Yes.
I bet, did you enjoy the learning the business side of it as well?
Yes,
or you were just
you
like,
know,
yeah.
it's so funny that I am able now to look back and see that, yes, I'm good at math. And let me put it this way. I know my why. I know why God created me. My mission in life is to bring order and beauty wherever I am. Whether I'm sitting with you, whether I'm busy putting a space together, in whatever arena God puts me in, it is to bring order and beauty. But now I begin to join the dots. With numbers, with reconciliation, with accountants, it's just about order. It's just about order. Was it my passion? No, absolutely not. But I was good at it. But it's now then that I can come to the place that I am and begin to understand how I was prepared to be where I am. Because even in my business and my arena of creativity, I still need to do my accounts. I still need to put things in order, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. So that is, I would say that it was not a space of waste. I managed a couple and quite a number of companies before I got and stepped out in faith into saying, this is what I'm going to do. But as I look at the evolvement of my life and what I've been doing, it's just preparation of where I am today.
I completely agree with that thing, by the way. There's no experience that's wasted. From the time you're young until you're growing, there's no experience that's wasted. When did you make the decision to transition from business management to completely go into design and creativity?
Possibly what I could even just point out before I answer that is I remember that my first job, amazingly, was in an isolated little town city in Botswana, and I was working with engineers. And these guys, it was a consulting engineering company that was working with development of infrastructure. And what they're doing, because they're very organized, it's not like Uganda, Kampala, where everybody just comes and builds and the neighbor builds a tall apartment and then there's this. They plan from start. So you have the roads, you have all the pipe work done, you have, and then people begin to build.
Yeah.
And it is amazing that never would I have thought that so many years later, over 20, I find myself now in a space where I'm working on projects, building projects. So like you say, time is not wasted. How I made that decision to say, it's time. You come to a place, I would say, especially to the younger generation, where you know that your next season has come. It's a knowing within. I know that many people battle and say, is it time to leave this job? All right? Or is it time to step out and do this? It comes with a discernment, but it comes with knowing the voice of God personally. And there was this time when I knew, Tash, it's time to leave. At that time, by the way, I was managing properties as well. So I've managed
How old
properties.
were you at this time?
In my mid-40s. Yes, in my mid-40s.
Okay.
Yes. And so I knew this is, for now, this is who you are, and it's time to step out. Now, stepping out needed courage. Very often we have to make these decisions and let go of what we call our comfort zone and the comforts, whereby your comfort could come in many forms. Your comfort comes in a solid paycheck that you know is there and will be there at the end of the month. It comes with a knowing that this comes with a security. Now, stepping out in faith takes a lot, because then you have to trust. And for me, it was trusting that God had a good plan for me, and that I was being taken to the place that had been prepared for me. And my testimony around that is just amazing, because when I made that decision, everything began to work.
Those were the signs
out for
that
me.
you...
Those were the signs.
Yeah.
My first client, the office space that I got from a very, very generous friend, everything just worked out for me. And that's then when I knew, all right, this is where I need to be. But it's amazing. It doesn't stop there, because, like you said, Natasha is a designer, an interior designer, and I'm in a season where I believe I'm moving on. Believe it or not, yes.
I like that you're open to, because a lot of times when you hear the thing of moving on or changing, I think it's more in the younger generation. Personally, I don't hear it within my parents' generation. Like, if my mother told me I'm changing what I've been doing since I was a kid, I would be like, are you sure? So I like that you even can tell that now I'm almost moving on. What have you rediscovered about yourself in this season that, well, you may be living it, but what did you discover about yourself that maybe you didn't know in the 40 years before?
So what I learn more as I grow and as I evolve and as I mature is that, like I said, for as long as you know your why, for as long as you know what's in your hand, I know what's in my hand, and it's beauty and it's order. So it's going to take me into different arenas. And the arenas it's taking me into is, one, mentoring. I'm mentoring young creatives like you. That's a start. So I know that I've been prepared now at this stage. I've been through the process. I have experience. And what is it that I can impart and teach? So now I see that I'm in that space. I'm in a mentoring space. I'm in a teaching space. And I have that responsibility. It's not much about who am I and all the things that I do. Life comes with responsibility. So then what is my responsibility in this season? All right? So for that, I'm seeing, because I say a lot to my mentees that, you know, when you get onto a track and a journey of who you are and your purpose, the end will always be there. The vision that you have. So as you walk along that path, you will find the people that you need. You will have the needs, the resources that you need. So basically, as you're working, like I am, I'm walking along this journey, all right, of purpose. And along the way, now I'm meeting the young Belindas, and I'm meeting all the other young ladies that you know, and young men that you know. And that really, I would say, is the space that I'm in. I'm one, too, who has a belief that there is nothing. You know, when people talk about retirement, I don't understand. I don't believe that there's retirement.
You're like, no.
No, there's no retirement, because if you then say that I have retired, that means I have retired from who I am and my why, all right? But I believe that until you lay in that box, you have purpose and you're called to do and be something.
Yeah, I completely agree. But do you find yourself changing as you go into different parts of your purpose? So would you say the Natasha now, who is now leaning into being a teacher and whatever, did you feel that you could teach before, or if this is something that has come up because of some experiences you've had now?
Absolutely not. I mean, I look at myself now today and maybe 2 months, and it's amazing how so much is coming out of me, and I never would have thought, Belinda, that I'll be an interior designer. I never thought that, all right? And then bringing me into a space of teaching, I never would have imagined that. Something you just might not know about me, by the way, is I'm a minister of the word. I teach the word, all right? Now, anybody would look and say, what? You're an interior designer, you're a pastor, you're a this. But what is it? Beauty and order.
It's still this. The core of it is still the same. You mentioned that you mentor young. I've been trying to push myself into that mentoring. What are you learning about yourself by talking to the younger generation?
Okay. So what I learn about myself by walking and talking with a younger generation is that, like a lot of my peers believe or think, we don't know everything. We don't know everything. I am learning that the world itself and the systems of the world have also changed and evolved. If we don't humble ourselves as the older generation and come to a place where can allow ourselves to listen to you and to learn from you, there's going to be disarray. I believe that there's a bigger divide between the generations. Your generation is having issues relating and communicating, especially with parents. And you know why? It's just because it's not out of what is happening, I would say, in the family setup. It's just what is happening out there that has come to disarray. I think the older family setup like ours, you know, we lived, we did as what mom and dad said. If dad said you have to be Tasha, you're going to uni and you're going to be a doctor or you're going to be a pilot. And we just had to conform and to do that. But now, right now in my hands, I have children who are very different. And other parents are saying to me, but your daughter majored in psychology and film. What is that? And how do you allow that? All right? And then you have a son maybe who's a chemical engineer who's possibly not even operating or working in that area. But you come to a place where then we have to accept and understand that you guys are different from who we are, and to allow you to be and express yourselves in the way that you need to express yourselves.
I'll say your kids are very lucky, by the way, because it is not the norm. There's we usually have these chill and connect sessions with Can We Talk, and one of the things that really came up was navigating the relationship with parents as an adult child. And it's like, where is the manual? How do you do this? Because as an adult now, I feel like, okay, I know a little bit about the world, but your parents are saying, no, you don't. For you navigating the adult children, how do you then do the work for your ego? Because you raise them, I'm sure you know better, you know more than them, in terms of just by experience, just by the number of years you've been here. How are you navigating those conversations with your children where you bring up Shari, for example? Shari is an amazing, amazing creative. And for example, when she was fundraising for her film, how do you navigate those conversations with her, but also with your peers?
So that's a very good one and a very good example. What I have learned too is that we're not, as human beings, we're we're not always going to agree with each other. And you come to a place where you compromise or you agree to disagree, right? An example of Shari is bringing out a movie on a subject, sex, which in our generation we did not talk about with our mothers, with our, even just amongst ourselves. All right?
Oh, really?
No, we did not.
Even with your own friends in university?
Absolutely not. But it's different because culturally, I would say maybe here we did not. But then I lived in Botswana, which was now totally different. When I went to Botswana, by the way, by first year, second year at university, possibly, I'd say 30% of the young girls in my class were expecting and had a baby. And they went and they had their babies and they came back to class. Now, for us who've been brought up in a different cultural context, you're like, whoa, what is this? So it's different. It's cultural, all right? But back to this. I have learned, especially with my children, is that do not fight. Do not fight. Listen, all right? Listen. There are times, I'll be honest, where I'll just, all right, go to my room, take a breather and say, all right, that's what she wants to do. I might not agree with it or parts of it, but what I believe for each one of us, whether you're young, whether you're old, wherever you are, is that my son once gave me very good advice. He said, Mom, just understand. All right, that's Jared. He said, whatever it is, we all learn from the choices that we make.
That's true.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So everybody's learning. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But you have then you have the opportunity to step out and say, all right, let me do this.
Yeah.
So it is a very humbling because sometimes
That's
I have,
the word,
most
humbling.
of the time,
Yeah.
I have to sit and listen to them because they'll say, Mom, you need to do it this way. My kids are tough. When I get like a new phone and all these gadgets, they'll just say, Mom, sort yourself out. Check, learn, set it up yourself. Because
Really?
we can't baby you. You're going to have to learn. And that's what I love about it. Because it's kept me young. It's kept me young and just,
I love it. You've talked about living in different countries. You've talked about Botswana, Kenya, your dad was from Malawi, here you are in Uganda. First of all, why did you choose to settle in Uganda?
All right, so my life is very interesting, the story of my dad. My dad was originally from Malawi, and very interestingly, as a little boy, his parents, or a young boy, his parents had a desire to send him to one of the best schools in Africa. And at that time, it was Bodo.
So, really?
Yes, at that time, it was Bodo. So I want you to think and picture, we're talking about over 70 years ago. And you're talking, think of a little boy who comes on a boat, brought by his mother, on a boat across the sea, across the waters, to be brought to school. And he came and studied in Uganda at Bodo. That's the background. And fast forward, he does his primary, he does his all his schooling at Bodo, the primary and the senior, and from there then goes to Makerere University, and then returns to his country, Malawi. He was involved at the time with the president and became political, and had a few disagreements and had to leave the country as an exile. And what best to the place that I believe had become home to him as a young man, and that was Uganda. So that is the root and the history of how my dad then comes back to Uganda. We are a family of 10 children. The girls were born, all of us, because I have 6 brothers, big brothers. So all the boys were born in Malawi and the UK, but us girls were born in Uganda.
So you're 4 girls?
Yes, so we're 4 girls. So the transition then is that he was at Makerere University, and then again has to leave the country because at that time Idi Amin now was president, and there's also a time of disarray, and they were political again, and then they were looking for a lot of the poets and writers at the university, and so he had to then leave the country.
Who are they looking for the poets?
I think at that time is because they were vocal and what they were speaking about. Yes, so they were looking for specific people.
Okay.
And then I think they were warned. And so it's from there that he left Uganda and moved to Kenya.
To Kenya.
Yes, and then that's how I also transitioned and went to school to Kenya.
So you went to school in Kenya,
So
then
I went to school in
Botswana.
Kenya and then Botswana. He also worked in Nigeria.
So you lived in
Yes,
Nigeria?
I didn't.
Oh,
we didn't
okay.
live in, yes.
But
and
you would
then,
visit.
Yes, and then I did my high school in Kenya, and then it's more of my mature and I would say higher education of university that then we transitioned and moved to Botswana. So back to who I am. I am what I like to say with my siblings, we are mixed, we are nomads. We are nomads. We have lived everywhere and anywhere. The beauty of it is that it has acclimatized us and prepared us for everywhere in the world. I could be anywhere and feel at home. Home to me is not really a country I am or a location. Home is with my family. And that makes life easy for me. A few years later, as I did my uni, I then met my husband, who was a doctor, a Ugandan doctor. That's what brought me back to Uganda.
Oh,
That's
Uganda
what
was
brought me-
always
yes,
kept
yes,
pulling you
that's
guys
what brought
back.
me back to Uganda.
For me,
So-
when I left my country, there's that first initial, I don't want to say culture shock, but trying to find yourself, because it's so easy to live in a place, like if you grew up in Uganda, your identity is tied to the community you have in Uganda and this, and then when you move to another country, I remember when I first moved to Canada, I had an identity crisis of who am I really, because now you're not being defined by who your parents see you as or who this community sees you as. How have you been able to find yourself in all these different places you've been? Do you think that they bring out different parts of you?
When you grow up attached like me, you find yourself in a lot of social context and places where you might appear to be uncultured. Uncultured because, like, we never grew up we didn't grow up in Malawi, where my father comes from, and we didn't grow up in Rwanda, where my mother comes from, all right?
Do you go back to Malawi?
Yes, we when Dad returned to Malawi, yes, we then,
Oh,
yes,
okay,
we
okay.
had the opportunity. And so, back to when I say that it is the stability and security that was created within the family that has given us I believe the security when you talk about identity. So like
Or
I said,
foundation.
or foundation. And so I don't quite find myself lost where I'm anywhere, because like I said, that's been my life as a nomad. All right? That's been my life as a nomad. And so that would be my way of
Community has sort of kept you grounded to everything. Let me take you back to motherhood. I know we talked about where you are now, but let's first go back to when you've just become a mother. I think that's a pivotal part in a lot of women's lives where it shakes you up a bit. It's a lot of change. Where were you by then? Were you in Uganda?
I was in Botswana when I had my first child.
You were in Botswana. How old were you?
I was 22.
22.
Yes.
What would you tell 22-year-old Tash? Right? I feel weird calling you Tash. We don't say Auntie Tash.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's good. What I'll tell 22-year-old Tash is learn who you are. Be self-aware. One of the things that I have learned in my arena, by the way, of mental health and emotional health is one of the foundations and the important stages of life is individuation.
Yes.
Individuation helps you understand and know who you are as a person, and then you are self-aware, all right? So when I look back and I see myself at 22, it was my belief that I was at that point of, I'm old enough and mature to make certain decisions, you understand? And so it's that I can look back then and say, one, I wasn't quite mature and ready for marriage. I wasn't prepared. But somehow, somewhat, I waded through and I did it and I made it with a sense of responsibility. But it's at that stage I became a mother now to a young man who's 32 years old. And I think I've done a darn good job of being a mother that I have.
Yeah.
That I have. So
I know your children. You have.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You have.
Yes. So that's what I would say to my old 22-year-old self, and even just to anybody out there, just channeling and trying to see where they are and who they are. Key, individuation. Who am I? Be self-aware. What is my what and my why? That then prepares you for the next phase and stage of life where you begin to make the bigger decisions of who then you will be partnering with and living with and building life with, of where you will be making decisions to say, I'm going to work in this place and I'm going to build a career in this place. It comes from understanding first your why and your who.
Yeah. When you talk about knowing who you are, I mean, now would you say that you're still discovering things about yourself, right?
I am. I am.
Does it ever end? Like, do you think you reach a point where I can sit down and say, you know what, I know who Belinda is? Because right now I can tell you why I'm doing this season of Rediscovery. Yes. At a point I thought I knew myself when I was starting the podcast, around 27 there. You know, I've gone through a bigger part of my 20s. I could tell you this is who I am and this. And then I lost my sister and it flipped even my personality changed because of that big change. How do you think that you get to a point where you're like, this is who I am and you can sit in it and you're sure? Or it's just a journey that you just take step by step, especially because now you're able to see it from the other end?
Yes. I hope I'm answering your question. Your why remains, but your persona and who you are might just be challenged in different areas. But the beauty of it is if you choose to look at it from a positive perspective and say, what am I learning from this?
Yeah.
All right? And always remember that for everything that you're doing, Belinda, even as we sit here, has nothing to do with you. Right now, both of us are sitting here out of purpose for others. For others, right? So when you go through bad and when you go through the good, it's just a learning process. Why? Because one day you're going to find yourself stepping in to be there for somebody else. So it's about others.
Yeah.
It's about others. That's the way I see life and I see my why. And where is my why taking me? My why brought me here today, for instance. But it's not about me.
Yeah.
It's about somebody out there. Yes.
I truly believe the why not changing.
Yes.
When you ask people about purpose and they tie it to a job or whatever, more is like,
Exactly.
no, the why has been there since you were a child. Yes. It's just that it came up in different ways until where you are now. Yeah. Thank you for that. We're coming to the end of the conversation where we get to pick. I get to pick a question card and you get to pick one from the Can We Talk deck, and you can ask a question, we both answer, and I'll ask my question and we both answer as well.
All right. Okay.
Oh, I've over-asked this question, but I really like it and I want to hear your answer.
Okay, lovely.
What is one piece of advice you're glad you ignored?
Wow. I find that in life, when you go through different challenges, you will get advice that, especially in our generation, there's always advice of look at it from this perspective, look out for, say, the other person, all right? Or you have to think, for instance, put your children first, put this first. One of the things that you don't hear very often is put yourself first.
Yeah.
It sounds selfish.
It even has a negative
It sounds exactly
connotation.
But what I have learned through my experiences, especially even for my place as a nurturer and a mother, if I don't look out for myself and take care of myself, I cannot be the best for the people out there.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's true. I also used to find it, I'm now in my selfish era because now I owned it. I was like, you know what? It's okay to put myself first. Yeah. In our culture, it's community only. Yes. Yeah. I think for me, the piece of advice I'm glad I ignored is don't quit. Like I've allowed myself to quit stuff, and I think it has allowed me to redirect into the path that I want to go. Like you, I also did finance. Yes. I allowed myself to quit that industry. I've quit several jobs, and now it led me to Can We Talk. So I think quit when you need to, whether it's that relationship or the job. Allow yourself to quit when it's not working anymore.
That's true. So the question here is, so am I asking you, am I asking me?
We'll both answer.
Okay. Yeah. What was your first impression of me?
Me, I was like, who's this dope ass woman? I swear, like the way you dress, first of all, first impression, I was like, oh, this is a very dope person. And then when we talked, I think the first time actually we engaged was at a Can We Talk event.
Yes, true.
And I want to get to know her more. That's all I was thinking. Okay. Yeah.
Wonderful. Funny enough, as you talk about that and involvement, so I'm in a space where I have had a lot of voices talk about, Tash, your dress, Tash, your earrings. So that's part of my new me. I shall be soon starting a fashion line.
And order and beauty.
Yes. Order and beauty. Yeah. My first impression of you, Belinda, one, I know your brother as fact that he's my son's close friend, and then I get to meet his sister. First impression, I had my expectations out of what I already knew, but my first impression of you was the confidence that you carry. Confidence that you carry. It takes confidence and a knowing to be able to carry out and head and spearhead conversations like this. I think I've said this before at the last, that my prayer for you is that with this that God has put in your hands and getting people to have conversations, you will purpose to use it with responsibility, because you want people to have conversations that are meaningful, that will build, that will edify, and that will bring healing. And do you know what? I have confidence that you're going to do that.
Thank you. It means so much coming from you. Yeah. Amen. Amen. I receive it. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Can We Talk podcast. If you're loving the conversations, be sure to subscribe and follow as we continue to rediscover ourselves this season. Until then, can we talk?
Tuvute wala